Seches Bava Kamma Daf Zayin. The Gemara continues its discussion of how a mazik, a damager, needs to pay the money that he owes and how he has to use idis, highest quality land. The Gemara will also speak about whether or not he can use metaltalin. The Gemara is in the middle of a machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara is trying to explain what exactly this machlokes is about. So first, the Gemara is going to conclude its discussion about hektish. We've seen that Rabbi Akiva said you pay from the idis of the mazik, and you also pay kavachomer, you pay that way for hektish. And the Gemara has tried two options as to what that means, kavachomer for hektish. The Gemara now gives its third and final pshat. The Gemara says kavachomer for hektish means that if you are mazik, if you damage property of hektish, kavachomer, certainly you have to pay from the idis, from the highest quality land, because hektish has more rights than the individual. And the Gemara explains, even though we have a drasha that the whole parsha of Nezikin is only talking about where a person damages an equivalent, another hedyet, an acquaintance, that's different than hektish. But there's a machlokes in what way is it different than hektish. We had the opinion of the Chachamim behold that if he damages hektish or his ox damages hektish, doesn't have to pay at all. Rabbi Akiva holds no, hektish is actually stricter. If a person damages hektish, or if his ox damages hektish, he has to pay full value right away, even if it's Karen. There is no tam half payment. So if the hektish ox damages a regular person, then the hektish doesn't have to pay at all. If the person damages hektish, it's more strict than the regular. The regular would only have to pay half, but for hektish you have to pay the whole amount. And therefore, that is the kavachomer, that it also has to be from idis and can't be from the lower quality thing, from ziburs. Now, the Gemara says if this is true, then we have a new pshat on machlokes between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. Because in machlokes Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel, we've been struggling to figure out what it was. Rabbi Akiva had said you have to pay from meitav sedeu, meitav karma, you have to pay from the highest quality things. And Rabbi Shmuel had said, no, this is only for nezikin min ziburis. So the Gemara wants to say a new pshat. Everyone agrees that when you pay for a regular person for hedis, you have to pay the idis of the nizik. And if that is equal to the lowest quality land of the mazik, so be it. The machlokes is, do you have to pay anything to hektish? Do you hold like the Chachamim, or do you hold like Rishem ben Manasi, who holds that you have to pay the nezik shalim? So Rabbi Shmuel had held you don't have to pay anything to hektish. And when Rabbi Akiva argued, he said you have to pay meitav sedei, meitav karmi. He's just saying you have to pay it all. He's saying that there is an obligation to pay even to hektish, and you have to pay from the highest quality. And on that, Rabbi Shmuel had said, no, b'din nizik, it's only when it's nizikin for a hedyet, that's where you have to pay. So this is a whole new pshat in that machlokes. So Gemara says that this pshat is not viable for three reasons. First of all, the Brisa clearly says that they're arguing over what the pasuk is for. It says leiba hakosov. This pasuk is teaching me this. That means that this machlokes is about how you read the pasuk. That's not the machlokes between Rabbanan and Hashem ben Manasseh. That's totally different machlokes. It's not about how you read the pasuk of meitav karma. The second problem with this is that if you say it this way, it comes out that kavachomer doesn't make sense, because hektish is not stricter rules than the hedyet. Rabbi Yishmael holds that hektish doesn't get paid at all. Rabbi Akiva holds no, it does get paid, but it's not any stricter than hedyet. So the kavachomer, that hektish is even stricter, doesn't make sense either. And the third problem with this is that we have a brisa that explicitly says that the argument is over, is it idis de nizik or idis de mazik, and you can't say that it's over whether or not you have to pay at all. Okay, now the Gemara has a kasha from a brisa. How does this fit with all these halachos? We're going to have two answers, one simple, one complex. So the kasha is that up till now we've been saying that the mazik has to pay from meitav sedeu, meitav karmi, he has to pay from the highest quality land, from what we call idis. It means he can't pay benis, he can't pay ziburs. And the Gemara has a kasha is a brisa that says, when the Torah says that you need to pay for the damage, it says yashiv. And the term yashiv, the brisa says, is to include shaveh kesef, even subit. Shaveh kesef means you could use silver coins, which is very high quality, like it is, or even subit, you could even use bran, which is very low quality things, and you would have to use a lot of it to make up that value. So the implication is that you could use good stuff, you could use bad stuff. So what's pshat? How could we say we have one drasha, you have to use meitav sedei or meitav karmai, and another drasha that says you could even use bran? And you could use kesef or bran, good stuff or the bad stuff. So the Gemara gives us two answers. The Gemara's first answer is that the difference is whether you're volunteering to pay or you're being forced to pay. If the nizik had to take the guy to court, then he could demand the idis. Then he could demand the highest quality things. If you made him work to get the money out of you, then he could take the high quality things he gets to pick. If, however, you volunteer to pay on your own, you could get off paying with subin lower quality things. Now, Ula said this name of Ravi Loi. He wanted to say that if you look carefully, the words of the pasuk is Yishalem, Meitav Karma. Yishalem, that's when he's being forced to pay. So that's when it's Meitav Karma. So Abai asked, the word Yishalem doesn't mean he's being forced to pay. It just means he will pay. Being forced to pay would be Yishulam. So therefore it doesn't really fit. And Abai wants to say a different shot. And Abai goes to the halachos of Leket Shiklopeya Meiser Ani. These are special gifts that are given to the poor out of a person's field. And the rule is that you qualify as poor if you don't have 200 zuz. Now somebody who qualifies as poor can take any amount. He can even take 1,000 zuz. As long as if he has 199 zuz, he qualifies as poor, he can take 1,000 zuz. If he has 200, he gets nothing. Now, the Brisa brings a case where somebody has 200 zuz in assets, but in real estate and not liquid. And the Brisa there, paskins, that the halacha is, you give him up to 200 zuz. If he had 100, you give him another 100, and now he has a total value of 200. So the Gemara is wondering, what's pshat? If you consider his assets to be liquid, then if they count as if they were liquid, then he has 200 zuz of value. You shouldn't give him anything. If they don't count as anything, so then you should give him up to 1,000 zuz. Why do you just fill up his value to 200 zuz? Now, the Bryce is clear that if for some reason he's not getting full value for the property that he has. That's why this special halacha applies. If he would get full value, it would count as liquid, and we would say that he has the assets and doesn't get anything. So then the Gemara expresses it as follows. What does it mean? What's the reason why he's not getting full value? If everybody's property, if the general property market dropped, and that's why he's not getting full value, so then this is the actual full value. The property market has dropped. The full value is less than what it was worth before. I'm so sorry it's not worth what it once was, but now it's worth less, and therefore he doesn't have that asset. The asset is no longer worth 200 zuz. It's only worth 100. That is its real value. Then you should give him however much you can. You should give him up to 1,000 zuz. Why is it limited to 100? If it's his value, his property that dropped, everyone else's normal market value, but him happens to be very stuck for funds, and everybody knows that he needs money, and therefore everybody's going to squeeze him and not willing to pay the fair market value for his, then he truly owns more than 100 zuz. He owns the full 200 zuz. He may not be able to sell it for that amount, but that's what the asset's worth. If that's the case, we shouldn't give him anything, because we should say he has a full 200 zuz. So the Gemara's answer is that property fluctuates throughout the year. In the Tishrei months, it's not plowing season. You can't get in another crop still this year. Its value is low. In the Nisan months, now is planting time. If you buy the land then, you could still get another crop in, and therefore the value is higher. Most people, therefore, sell their land during Nisan, because that is when it has its highest value. No one would sell it in Tishrei, which is where we are now. This person, because he's stuck for funds, has to sell it in Tishrei, and that's why his value is lower. And therefore, if we want to give him funds, we say, look, we're just going to give you enough funds to get you over to the value you could have gotten during Nisan. That way, you have the asset as to what it's worth if you would be able to wait. So we're getting you to the point where you could wait. And therefore, once we do that, you no longer have to sell it. And now you have the assets. We have no right to give you any more because you no longer qualify as an ani. So that's the case there. And Abai wants to learn from there is that at some point you could say, look at the future price. You don't look at the current price, you look at what you could get in the future, and you have certain leverage if that is something that you could wait and you'd be able to get. And therefore he says the answer to the original kasha, which is that the pasuk seems to indicate that sometimes you need to pay from the ziburis and sometimes you need to pay from the idis, is as follows. It's talking about a situation where the nizik wants to take lower quality land. Let's say he, for some reason, prefers the baininess that the mazik has. Either he has a field near it or he has something, for some reason he prefers that. So if that's the case, can he demand it? Can he say, I want this land, and I'll get a little bit more of it because it's lower quality? Can he demand that from the mazik, or does the mazik have a right to insist that I want to give you the idis? Which is an interesting argument, but if that's the argument. So the Gemara says that the pasuk is teaching me that the mazik has a right to insist, I want to give you idis, and I'll give it to you if I want. You can't demand the baininess. Now, normally you could. Because if he has a right to take idis, he has a right to take the baininus. The case in which he can't is where the value of the land is going to change. And let's say it's going to go up in 6 months. Now, as Tishrei, it's going to go up in 6 months. So in 6 months, it's going to be worth more, which means you'll get less amount, less actual land area to make up the value that he owes. So the Nizik comes and says, I want to take the baininus, and I want it more, and I want it in this area. And the Mazik could say, if you want to start with your preferences, I prefer to pay you on 6 months from now's rate. So I'll give you that. So if you want to say what you prefer, I'll tell you what I prefer. And therefore, if you take the idis like I want to give you, take it. If you start insisting on things, I'm going to pay you the coming rate, in which case you'll get much less. And that'll effectively force him into the payment that he wants. Now, the Gemara asks on this that this makes no sense because the Torah specifically says that the mazik has all the rights. It gives him the right to collect idis if he wants. Now, if he says he wants the bainis, he should be allowed to demand that. Why are we penalizing him and saying, no, he's forced to not be able to accept that? That's clearly not what the Torah wants. It wants to give him the ability to collect idis, and certainly less if that's what he demands. So therefore, the Gemara says no. So you know what? The accurate comparison of the case of the Meiser Ani would be to a Bal Chayv, somebody who borrowed money, and he has to pay the money back. So the halacha is, in Midaraisa, he only has to pay from his Ziburis. The Rabbanan said he has to pay from his Baininus, from his middle-level quality, in order that people should be willing to lend. If people knew that they were only going to be able to collect money in Ziburis, they will never lend anything to anybody. So Midarabanan, they allowed him to collect from his middle-level land. So now, what happens if the Malva demands, I want lower level lands, I need that specific land for whatever reason, and I want that. And that's a situation where the lender could say, if you want that, then I'm giving you the future price, which is much more expensive, and you'll get much less. If you want to take it now, you take it to the one that I want to give you, and I want to give you the baininus. So the Gemara says this can't be right either, because then you're messing up the Takana D'Rabbanan. Again, people aren't going to want to lend the money, because the lender will say, if I would have never lent you the money, I would have it, and then I could purchase the land that I want. And now that I don't have the money and I lent it to you, I get back what I don't want. So therefore, next time, I'm not going to lend anybody. So the whole Takana, again, just like before we asked that the Torah intended for the Mazik to have the power here, the Rabbanan intended for the Bal Chayv to have the power here. So you're still taking that away. So the Gemara therefore answers, so the proper comparison is to a Ksuba Sisha. She collects from Ziburis. If she says, I'd rather take Baininus and get less, that's where he has a right to say, you want to take Baininus and get less, you want to start playing with the rules, then I'm going to give you the future value, not the current value, and you'll end up getting much less. And that's where he has a right to say, no, your din is Ziburis, you'll stick with only Ziburis. All right, either way, we haven't answered the original kasha, which is, what does the Torah mean when it says Yashiv? You could even pay with Subin. You could even pay with bran. I thought you're only supposed to pay with highest quality things to the mazik. So the Gemara tries a few more answers. So the Gemara quotes from Papa and Puna Beit of Yeshua from Rav, who say that you have to pay the best of every product you have. You don't have to pay the best thing in your household. But for example, if you want to pay subin, you have to pay best quality subin. That's what it means. You could pay subin, but it has to be the idis of your subin. Now the Gemara doesn't like this because it says Meitav Sadeu. It has to be the best of your land. That means it should be the highest quality. You shouldn't be using whatever thing you want. So the Gemara answers, and this is the one that's really Rav of Papa and Puna Beit of Yeshua. Previous one was Rava. So they answer no. Metaltalin always counts as idis. And therefore, kesef, subin, whatever you want, you could use that. And the reason is because you could always move it somewhere else. If it's not moving here, if the people don't want to buy it here, you'll go somewhere else where people want that. And therefore, you'll always be able to sell it. Land, if you have low quality land, it can be very difficult to move. How are you going to get rid of land? You can't move it somewhere else. If the market here isn't good, you're not going to be able to sell it. And therefore, that's where Ziburis is a problem. But anything movable always counts as the idis value. Okay, now the Gemara switches to ask a general concept about the concept of rating land. And the Gemara wants to know, is it an objective system? The land is rated on a scale that is the same for everyone. There's an international agreement as to what quality of land qualifies as idis, what quality counts as baininus, and what counts as ziburis. Or is it personal? Do we look at each person's property and divide it up into categories, and he has the good, the bad, and the middle? So the Gemara says this question was asked by Rabbi Shmuel bar Abba of Ukrunya to Rabbi Abba, and he said as follows: in Rabbi Shmuel's opinion, that you have to pay with the nizik's land, it's certainly personal to the nizik. When we say the idis of the nizik, you're looking at what the nizik has. That's his own personal idis. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to say that you follow the objective standard that has nothing to do with the nizik. There's an objective standard. So that's for sure that it's a subjective standard, that of the nizik. The question is according to Rabbi Akiva, who says, no, you don't follow the standard of the nizik. When he says you follow the standard of the mazik, does he mean specifically of the mazik and it's subjective? Or does he mean you don't follow the rating of the nizik, but you also don't follow that of the mazik? There's an objective evaluation, and you go with the entire world. So the Gemara says, what kind of question is this? The pasuk clearly says the idis of the mazik. So that means the mazik's personal idis, and it should be subjective to what his property is. It should not be evaluated by the rest of the world.